You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
All right, good morning, everybody. This is Friday morning's edition of Ask the Master Auto Technician. And this show is, well, we designed it to help you get answers about car questions. We also we talk about politics locally. We talk about how it affects you, the car you drive, even the gasoline you drive, or the oil you put in your car. Believe it or not, all that affects, it's all decided by Washington and your tax dollars. But anyway, I've got, speaking of not something that is not involved by your tax dollars, I got Hansson Hindenburg all the way from Baytown Tires. Hansson, you don't get any money from the federal government to support your business, do you? You don't get any special subsidies from the government to keep your doors open?
No, the government actually taketh away more than it ever giveth, so...
The Lord giveth and the government taketh away. That seems to be how it works on here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about brakes. You and I have had customers that have come in and they're all the time having warped rotor problems. And we've looked at it and done this and warranted it. And then we come to find out it's the customers doing things that they don't tell us about, like taking their car somewhere else and having them rotate the tires and put them on with the impact gun. Or maybe they had something done to the brakes they didn't want to tell you about. Have you seen any of these problems come about in your business over the years about brake pulsation and vibration?
We see a lot. I mean, noise and vibration are the two biggest concerns that the customer always has with brakes. Always.
Yeah.
And, we even see it on, like you said, on newer cars that only have like 15,000 miles on there because the tires hadn't been put on correctly and they weren't torqued by hand. And they go, well, this is only a 15,000 mile car. And even the dealership will go, well, the brakes are really not under warranty. They're wearable items. So... they have to replace the rotors, or, sometimes we can turn them, but a lot of cases you can't anymore because they're too thin to begin with.
And the labor involved to turn one, I want to say, Anna Marie, is a book given on labor to turn one right at an hour per side, or is it somewhere in that?
It's like 4/10 per side.
The point is, you can almost buy a brand new rotor for what it costs to turn the rotor.
9 times out of 10, that's absolutely right.
And and the other thing that I see, is something that Mark Sarlo and I were talking about, is what was the term he called it? I think I was reading about it the other day. Anyway, it's brake torque variation, where the actual pads will get embedded into the rotor. So you got a rotor that's actually thicker than it is in the other parts because the pad has got it embedded in there. And I didn't realize this was a problem because at brake torque variation, it has to do with mismatching the pads to the rotor. The metallurgy is not the same that the original equipment had, and sometimes when aftermarket pads get on there. And that's something that I'm starting to see more often as well when we do a brake job. If you don't put the right pads and the right rotors, because a lot of people say, well, I just want the cheapest price. We've even got commercials on television say, I only want to pay the cheapest price. And you get what you pay for.
Well, and you're absolutely right. We see it a lot on European and Asian cars is where the wrong pad has just been put on there.
Yeah.
And the European cars are very susceptible, and people go like, well, I have this $60,000 car, but it's making a noise. And realistically, unfortunately, it needed a $200 set of brake pads.
Yes, instead of the $45 brake pads you got on there. And it needs to have the rotors replaced. Give you an example. Volvos. The biggest complaint I see from Volvos after a brake job or a brake reline is my brakes make noise. They squeal. Well, what did you do to it? Well, we put pads on it, and we might have cut the rotors. And I said, well, you really should, make sure you lubricate everything correctly, and I would recommend putting Volvo pads on it. And if you've got hardware on there, the Volvo hardware, Volvo pads, make sure everything's right and change the rotors. If not, you're going to get squeal. I've never been successfully able to change just pads on a Volvo for a long-term fix.
Well, and again, those guys really don't recommend just changing the pads.
No.
They take the rotors, and the rotors are made out of a softer metal compound. So by the time you put just another set of pads on there, the rotors have actually kind of been compressed together.
Yes.
And have hard spots on them.
Mm-hmm.
And Volvo goes, no, you got to put new rotors on there because you can't turn the rotors that are on there. They're basically throwaway.
They are. You know, when you try to explain that to a customer with a $60,000 car, he says, well, I bought this car. I was expecting to get, not have to spend this kind of money on it. And I said, well, sir, I don't want to tell you, but this is how you do it right. Well, I've always in the past just thrown pads on there. And I said, well, you've never had a $60,000 car in the past either. I said, things are different. They're making them lighter weight. And this is why we do this show, is to explain to customers it's not a conspiracy out there to take their hard-earned money by, quote, ripping them off with an expensive brake job. Because I have people all the time that say, $500 to pads and rotors and do this and do that on per end. I'm going, well, sir, you want it done right, don't you? Well, yeah, I do. And you don't want noise. Well, yeah, that's right. Well, this is what it's going to take. Well, I've never paid this before. Well, like I said, you've never had this kind of car.
And we see it on American cars, too. They take Brembo, which is a European braking system, and just put it on some of their higher performance cars. And so, there's nothing, some of these are quadro piston and, triple slides and brake indicators. And a lot of those brake indicators, too, need to be replaced because the resistance changes, and then the brake light inside will come on.
Well, you're probably seeing this on Sprinters. There's a lot of people out there that bought the first and second generation Sprinters out there. They're made by Mercedes and sold by Chrysler for a while and everything. But they're great vehicles for work, but people don't. They see out there. I bet you everyone that comes into my shop that FedEx has or whatever, I always see a brake light on. And I go, you got a brake light on? Yeah, it's been on ever since I put brakes on it. Their brakes are fine. Well, the morning, they put aftermarket pads on there, and they didn't change the sensors. And the light's going to stay on. You got one on the rear, you got one on the front, and just about every one of them, they never changed them because they cost more money. And that seems to be the reason.
And some of those sensors, too, you got to put... you can't put aftermarket on there because the resistance is different. I've seen it where they put some inexpensive sensors back on there and the light still consistently stays on. Is because the resistance. We see that on Range Rovers and things like that. You have to get OE to make it right.
Well, we were talking about that on yesterday's show. I was talking about putting LED lights on people's cars. You've had them come into your shop where they put LED lights on the brake lights and the turn signals, and they won't blink. And they shake their head and go, well, the lights are working, why won't they blink? And I tell them, you don't have enough resistance.
That's right. You need a rectifier, and they do make them. I've actually put some in before.
Well, one of the things we found out, my father-in-law, is I actually read how much resistance a light bulb's in, that light bulb has in that circuit, and I actually put a resistor in it. One side goes to positive, one side goes to the negative of the wiring, and there's my resistor, just like and it has more load to make the blinkers blink. And like you said, rectifier or whatever you want to do, but for the poor working boy out there, that can read an ohm meter and go out and buy some resistors, it's a lot cheaper to put 15-cent resistors in there and go out and buy one of those high-dollar rectifiers. But
that's true.
Yeah, it's just one of those little tricks that I've learned over the years to get by. I've actually seen people that couldn't afford the resistors or didn't know how to do it, just go take small little light bulbs and wire it and hide them inside the car where the blinkers will work.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm serious.
I want to.
Well, I have seen that before. I've actually seen people going, if I put regular bulbs in there, they blink. And I said, well, okay. So what'd you do? He said, well, I took two small bulbs and I got one hidden behind the front headlight and I got one hidden behind the rear tail light. And I go, and it works? He said, yeah, it works fine. I said, okay, you got done the same thing by putting a resistor in it. Oh, I didn't know that. But it's just one of those little tricks out there.
I'm old school. If it had a regular bulb in there and it works, I put the regular bulb back in there.
No argument, but we see them come in all the time. That's what we're talking about, how resistance values, like on my wife's Crossfire, she had a light that came on, and we saw the bulb was bad, took the bulb out, wasn't the right number, but put a bulb in that looked like it. The light worked, but the light stayed on. The little warning light, because we didn't have, like you talked about, didn't have enough resistance. And that's why it's so very, very important that people put the right light bulbs in, the right brake pads in, the right rotors in.
When we talk about expense, and I see it quite a bit too, is, the center light, the third brake light goes out, and a lot of these newer cars have LED bars.
Yep.
And we talk about, the expense of repairing that third light is in the hundreds of dollars sometimes.
Sometimes when you tell a customer, yes, sir, I need to change your high-mounted brake light on your General Motors product here. Well, how much does that cost? Well, they got it on sale this week. It's only $197. Say what? They're expensive, sir. They don't. You have to buy the whole light bar that goes across there, and then you got 30 minutes or more of labor to stick it in there. So you could spend anywhere $200 to $300 just to fix a high mount.
Or when you do, the headlights on like a Chevy Cruze or something, like that, you got to take the entire bumper off.
Isn't that amazing?
It's a 2 to 3 hour job.
The first time I had to take a bumper off and looked at that, I went, "Who in the heck designed it this way?" But once you do a couple of them, you get it down pretty quick. You really,
yeah, the first time is the doozy, where you go,
boy,
why did they do this?
Why did you scratch your head going, there's got to be an easier way? And I found out the easiest way on these things before I take any light bulbs apart, and I want to pass this on to people. Go to YouTube. Please, go to YouTube. Watch how it's done. I had one of these right here, and I looked at my guy, and I said, man, they give us this much time to do it. It's got to be something wrong here. And we went to YouTube and watched it, and this one guy, I don't remember what the car was, Cobalt, or I don't know. Anyway, he did it in about 15, 20 minutes. I'm going like, wow, he just learned a couple of tricks. Sure saved the trouble. But if you could find someone about 3 years old, have real small hands, they could do it a lot easier and a lot quicker. I'm trying to train my one of my employees. He's got a small son who's about he's about 5 years old. I said, get him down here when we change these light bulbs. I think he's got enough. His hands are small enough to get in there and change these light bulbs a lot easier.
Well, see, I'm a little bit lucky. I have Diane,
That's
who's
true.
a woman, and she has smaller hands than I do. And I'm always amazed. Sometimes she can get her hands in those spaces between the bumper and stuff and get the bulbs in and out, where for my hands, there's no way. I can't even get close to it.
When we started talking about that, somehow or another, I had deja vu of the election process where everybody's comparing the size hands again for some strange reason. You remember during the 20...
for Donald Trump.
Donald Trump and Rubio and all that.
Maybe he'd be a good mechanic. We should ask him when he comes, maybe.
No, I'm not going to go there. He will come to Panama City one day during his next 4 years of administration, or however long he stays in. But it is an exciting transition period that's taking place right now. The Armageddon did not happen on November 8th or 9th after he came into office. The world's still turning around, and hopefully we will prosper and make our businesses prosper during 2017.
I hope so.
I do too. It gets harder and harder every year out there, and I really appreciate you getting on here. And I want people to come by and visit you, and they can call you at 873-8900 and ask about good, better, and best tires. You can say, okay, what's a good tire cost? What's a better tire cost? What's the best tire cost? And if they actually compare apples to apples, I think they will find that you're very competitive with everybody out there.
I try to be very competitive in the tires that I stock. I have experience with, and I try to, a lot of vehicles come in here and look and see how the tires wear, and I ask the people how they perform. So I try to have on the road experience with that particular tire to make sure that that's a good fit for your vehicle.
Yeah, just because we've been told by the people that sell the tires this is a good tire for this car, you and I have both found out sometimes they just don't work the way they say they work out.
No, and they really don't. And I try to, some people go like, why don't you sell me this tire? And I go, well, I've just had bad experience. I can get it for you and I will gladly put it on there. But I really don't think that's the right tire for your vehicle.
It does make a difference. There are the correct tires for people's cars. A lot of people say, well, a tire is a tire is a tire. And I go, no, it's not. Just because you have one that's the same size doesn't mean it's going to handle correctly, stop correctly, and do the things it's supposed to do safely. Tires, certain cars have to have certain types of tires, and they need to give you a call to find out what type of tire they need at 873-8900. That's Baytown Tires, right on the curve in St. Andrews, and they're open from can to cane every day except Sunday.
Have a great week. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later, Hansson. Bye-bye, everybody.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.